All right, are we ready? All right, great. Hi, everyone. I would like to welcome Dr. Laura Markham. Hey, Laura. How are you?
Glad to see you.
Glad to see you too. Okay, so Dr. Laura Markham is the author of Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids, How to Stop Yelling and Start Connecting, Peaceful Parents, Happy Siblings, How to Stop the Fighting and Raise Friends for Life, and now her latest book, The Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids Workbook, using mindfulness and connection to raise resilient, joyful children and rediscover your love of parenting. I love that, by the way, because we
all want that.
Dr. Laura Markham earned her PhD in clinical psychology at Columbia University and has worked as a parent coach with countless families across the world. Over 160,000 mums and dads enjoy Dr. Laura's free weekly coaching posts via email. You can sign up on any page of her website, ahaparenting.com, which serves up aha moments for parents of babies through teens. Dr. Laura's aspiration is to change the world one child at a time by supporting parents. The proud mother of two thriving young adults, well done by the way, who were raised with her peaceful parenting approach. She lives with her husband in New York. Wonderful. Okay, well, let's get right into it.
Okay.
I have a couple questions for you. The job of teens is to become more independent, but you often say that parents need to stay connected to their teens. How can parents navigate this balance?
It's a tricky balance, right? Staying connected, but allowing them to become more independent. But when you think about it, we have to start that when they're very little. We have to start it very early. So imagine your baby, your 1-year-old is just starting to toddle forward, taking those first steps. So you as the parent want to protect your child. That, I just remember 14 months, they'd fall down and smash their little face and be bleeding. It was so awful. Really, it's just, it's just awful because they would fall all the time when they were learning. But you have to stand back a little bit. Certainly you make sure they're toddling on soft grass instead of concrete, but you're standing back a little bit to allow them to learn to take those steps, because if you don't, how will they learn, right? You want them to feel like they can tackle the world, and sure, they're going to fall down and they can get back up again and try again, right? That's what we all want for our children. That's resilience. So from the time they're little, we have to train ourselves to that balance is not a science, it's a dance, right? It's like, can they handle this? How bad will it be if they fall? How can I give them support but not take over? Right? That's what we're doing their entire lives. So you'd think by the time they're teens, we're good at it, but we're not. We're not. We're still learning. We're always still learning. I always think that whatever stage they're in, maybe we get sort of good at that stage, the toddler stage, the preschooler stage, all those why questions, all the different things, the stages we get pretty good at, but then they're on to the next stage and we have to master that. So for teenagers, suddenly we're in a new stage where they're much more prickly. They're motivated by being close to their peers. They are embarrassed to have us be too close. You can't have even, they now have their own phone, right? But you can't just call your child when they're in front of their friends and they pick up their phone. It's like, yes, mom. You can't do that, because then they don't want their friends to even know they have a mom, I'm just so independent. I don't really have a mom, So instead, what do? You text, you learn ways to keep connected, right? Without overpowering them, without embarrassing them in front of their friends, without controlling them, right? Without stopping them from learning things, yes, of course you need to catch them if they're going to smash their face in the concrete or whatever the equivalent is as a 14-year-old. But on the other hand, you also are not going to stop them every time they trip, or they're not going to learn to watch where they're going, right? So I wasn't very specific about how you would do it, but I think the balance is every time you're noticing, okay, I do have to ask my kid about her homework, my 14-year-old, because I know she's not going to do her homework otherwise if I don't ask her. But I'm not going to do her homework for her. I'm not going to, check her homework. I'm just going to say, hey, how's your homework situation today, hon? And she's going to say, oh, I have a history test tomorrow. And you go, oh, bummer. What do do you have a lot of studying to do or whatever? And she tells you what she's got going. And you say, oh, you want a snack while you study? And that's it. You're not like checking to make sure she knows her history. If she wants to give you her English paper to read, that's her business. But you can't be that parent who's like, you can't turn that paper in until you give it to me so I can make sure it's good. You have to be willing to turn them loose at some point. And you have to each step of it's sort of like potty training. Remember those days? Like you're very involved in the beginning. You're totally involved with them. You're in the bathroom with them. You're making sure they're wiped. You're washing, making sure they're washing their hands. But sooner or later, you're not involved at all. And it seems like it takes forever at the time, but it's really fast. The teenagers are sort of like that. At the beginning of them, you're pretty involved. By the end of them, they have to be ready to leave your home, go move out, get a job, go to college, whatever their future holds for them. And you're not going to be sure, you're going to be texting them and calling them and having them come home and feeding them a good meal. And they're going to want to use your washing machine. But really, you're not so involved in their day-to-day life. You become you're never calling the coach during high school to see why they're not playing your kid. You're never lobbying for them with the teacher. You're not saying, oh, can't they improve their grade? What do they have to do? No, you're coaching your child to do those things. So you can stay connected and you can stay involved in their life to help them succeed, but you can't control them and you can't be overbearing. And it is the sort of constant process as it is when they're one, where you pull back and you go, how dangerous is it? Can I let them do this?
Yeah, I guess as well, part of it is actually acknowledging that it is stages. I mean, we talk about teenagers. I think it's the universal words. We all know it. But what does that actually mean for a parent? Understanding that they are, you froze. Okay. Understanding that this is now, I guess, looking at the end result, like you said, is them leaving. So therefore, what have I got to do now? Like you've got to change because of what your outcome's going to be.
Yes. And at the same time, I think knowing that there are stages gives you a little more confidence, because I think sometimes parents will say to me, oh my goodness, she's so mean to her brother. She's 4 years old and he's 2. She's so mean to him. Are they always going to be like this? And I'm like, no, actually, they will be fine. You want to increase the positive interactions. You want to help them learn to navigate the difficult things when their needs clash. So she will learn those skills. But the fact that she at 4 is bossy and difficult doesn't mean she'll always be bossy and difficult. You can have confidence that she will grow up. And I think it's important for parents to remember that too, because they think, oh, well, I have to help prepare them to be on their own. She's totally irresponsible now at the age of 15. It's like, well, okay, she won't always be 15. The prefrontal cortex is still developing.
Wow. So from your studies and what you've learned as a psychologist, got that right? What pieces of advice would you give to parents who are dealing with a difficult teen?
Okay. So first of all, we have to define how a teen is difficult. There are lots of ways for teens to be difficult. You could have a teen who's difficult because we live in a culture that has worked priorities, right? So your teen is maybe on social media all the time and on their phone all the time. And that's, it's addictive. It's designed to be addictive for all humans. And teens' brains are even more vulnerable than adult brains, right? So that would be a way to be a difficult teen, but that's a pretty normal way to be a difficult teen, right? Then you might have a teen who's struggling socially and is feeling very anxious, right? And
especially now with the pandemic, I think a lot of parents are identifying that. So what's your advice for that?
Well, on that particular thing, what's my advice? It is a time of great uncertainty, right? That's what the pandemic reminds us all, every human being. We aren't really in charge. We are only in charge of our response to events. We are not in charge of those events. We cannot create them. So what's our response going to be? Are we going to have a positive response or a negative response? Are we going to walk around feeling victimized? Or are we going to control what we can control in our own response, right? And I think we need to do that. One of the research studies that I was most struck by that was done during the pandemic about teens is that Teens who had parents who during the pandemic were able to be supportive of their teen did 100% better. The parents who were freaked out, scared, and what happens when we're freaked out and scared? We get anxious, we're radiating anxiety, we get snappish, we're criticizing our teens or anyone else around us. Maybe we drink too much, maybe we surf social media, or we're trying to especially in the beginning, trying to find out more about the pandemic, and you go down these rabbit holes, you're not going to find out anything that's going to really help you. What you needed to do was go to bed early and get a good night's sleep, right? So or maybe you just get addicted to different shows, or you're eating a lot of junk food. I mean, there's so many ways that we can cope as humans that are not so constructive, right? But the parents who were able to manage their own fears to cope more productively, they modeled that for their teen. So their teen coped better. And they also stayed in a place of more well-being themselves. They felt better. So, we're always radiating how we feel. So they were radiating more calm, more like it's okay. It's not a great situation in the world, but we are in charge of what happens in our home. And we can, in this apartment, we're going to be kind to each other. We're going to find things to be grateful for. We're going to connect with each other and have a good time together. That's a very different attitude. It's an emotionally generous attitude. The teens whose parents did that did so much better. And they were more socially able because they felt more confident. The teens whose parents yelled at them all the time, which happened, and the teens whose parents criticized them all the time because the parents were having a hard time, it's understandable. There are a lot of things to criticize about a teenager. They're not perfect, but really neither are we. And so I guess I'm saying if we can regulate ourselves first and stay connected with them and be supportive of them, that's what makes a difference to them. And they might still be socially anxious when they go see their friends, but they'll have more confidence, and they'll also talk with you about it. They'll say things like, I'm really worried about going back to school. I don't want to go back. I don't even know those kids anymore. I don't feel confident. I feel like it's going to be weird. I don't even know if I'm part of that social circle. They've been pretty distant ever since the pandemic started, and I haven't seen them. No one's texting me and stuff, and I don't know what's going on. And you can say, oh, that does sound scary. That sounds like it could make you feel worried. What are you going to do to support yourself? So when you go back that first day, you feel a little less afraid. Well, maybe I could call Jenny up. You think you might call Jenny, and then what might happen? Well, Jenny and I could walk in together that day, right? So then you've already got your child empowering herself to take charge of what will help support her. Because, our kids are going to find times in life when they're scared. Every human being has many. I mean, if you don't, you're not growing, right? If you don't find things that scare you, you're not taking on enough, right? So your child will find things that scare him or her. It's just going to happen. So that's not the goal, to raise children who are unafraid, because no one's always unafraid. The goal is to raise courageous children who feel that fear, and they do it anyway. They find ways to support themselves so they can face that thing that scares them. And when they do that, they become more unafraid. Fewer things scare them over time.
Yeah. I think something what you just said really resonates with me. I think as parents, sometimes we want to give them the solution.
Yes.
We're quick to remedy the problem.
Yes.
But in these teenagers, which is fine when they're little, I mean, that's what you're here for, is to help them with the body training, because they can't do it. Right. But I guess that's the important step of being a parent of a teen, is to allow them to find their own solutions.
Yes.
And make mistakes. But that's really difficult, isn't it, for parents to see and to be witness of? It's hard to see your kids go through that.
Yes, it's hard to watch them struggle. We do anything to keep them from being afraid and scared and mess up. We do anything. But the truth is, that wouldn't help them. It's like if our 1-year-old wanted to take that step and we said, no, I'm going to hold you up and let you pretend you're walking. You're not really going to walk. Well, really, how far would that get them in life? So it's, you're right. It's hard for us, but we're back to managing ourselves. When we can self-regulate, then we can be supportive for our teen. And, we can ask good questions. It doesn't mean you're not involved. It means you're not in charge. It means you ask questions, right? You say things like, when I wonder how you could support yourself, and your kid says, oh, I guess I could call Jenny. We might say, that's a great idea. Go call Jenny. No, we say, you think you could call Jenny? Wow. And what do you think might happen then? Well, I could try this. We could walk in together. We could, and all of a sudden she's brainstorming. She's feeling like she discovered the answer herself. Look how resourceful she is. And she knows it, right? Whereas what if I had told her, oh, well, why don't you call Jenny? She'd be like, oh, that's a good idea. My mom always knows what to do, but I don't know what to do, right? I just undermined her self-confidence by giving her the answer.
Wow. So as a parent who is stepping into this, because you may be, a parent of a 10, 11, 12-year-old who's just getting into this whole tween stage, which is, teen tween.
Preteen, yeah.
Preteen. Do you have any advice for them? Because I guess it's different. There's different stages of this. Teenagerhood.
Yeah.
I guess at that age, I've got one. I think we mentioned it before when we was having a chat. I've got a teen, tween, and a toddler. Right for me all. So the tween, the preteen, they feel like they're a full-grown teenager. They may even come off very mature. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that stage? That stage is very difficult too.
It is. It's a challenge, especially in our culture, because kids grow up very fast. So they can come off very sophisticated. Your 11-year-old can say to you, Mom, what's oral sex? And you're like, oh my God, how did that happen, right? Because our society is so prematurely exposing kids to things that they do come off sophisticated. But it doesn't mean that an 11-year-old is actually prepared. I'm thinking, I'll use a girl as an example in this one, because girls actually are more ambivalent about puberty. So boys, when they hit puberty, when they're this age, they're excited about it. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be a guy. I'm going to be a real man. I'm going to be powerful. I'm going to be, but girls, they want to be hot. They want to be desirable, but they also feel unready. They're not ready for their body to change. They don't want to, oh my God, you mean I'm going to be bleeding every month? That is scary and gross, right? It's a big change for them. And also, they know that in our society, women are objectified. So, an 11-year-old girl who asks you that question 1 minute or wants to buy this hot outfit, in the next minute, she's like anxious about guys looking at her, and like she knows she's vulnerable and she's ready for that, right? So it's a funny mix of sophistication, but also not being ready, especially for girls. But even boys, they want to be ready, but you put them out on a basketball court with boys who are 5 years older, and they're like, oops, I guess I'm not quite ready for that, actually, So that age, we want to still protect them, but we want to be following their lead on opening the conversations to talk about the things that matter to them. So, and I think of preteens as starting at age 10 now. I know that's crazy, but it's true. You've got a 10-year-old daughter, you can see her body changing, and it's already, they're preteens. So 10, 11, 12, I consider the preteen years. And my feeling about that is that we're very clear about limits still. It's like, if they get mouthy, and they do at this age, they get mouthy because people around them are mouthy, or they see examples in the media and they try things out. It's like, oh, I'm a big kid. I'm almost as tall as my mom now, or whatever. And they try stuff out, and you're like, excuse me, let's try that again, sweetheart. When they use that tone of voice with you or those words with you, you're like, excuse me. I had a noise that I used to use with our dog, who was a lovely dog, but would sometimes get into things she shouldn't get into. And I would go to her. And I found when my daughter was 11 and started to get mouthy, I did that once, like at my daughter. And she said, Mom, I'm not a dog. I said, I know you aren't, sweetheart, but I know you're getting into something you really don't want to get into. That's not what we do in our house, is it? And she said, all right. That was that. So I'm not suggesting that children should be treated like dogs at all, but I am suggesting you have a sense of humor about it, and that you set limits. Like, nope, that's not what we do. Let's try that again. Or if they're if they're mad at you, if they're not just testing, but they're actually mad, like, Mom, everyone else gets you and you never let me, and they're really mad about it, you can say, I hear you, how upset you are about this. I hear you. Let's take a deep, and let's say they're being more than just mad, like they're raising their voice and saying, you don't know anything, you're a bad mom or whatever. I want a new mom. And I would stay calm. Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Say, you are so upset about this. Because remember, when people are angry, they need to be heard. Rage does not dissipate until it's heard. And that's a legitimate feeling, their anger, just like anger always is. Doesn't mean they're right about everything. It means they need to feel heard. So when your child is angry, you say, I hear how upset you are about this. I want to hear more. Let's take a breath. I can't listen when you're yelling.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to hear when you're yelling. Let's try that again. Tell me now. You really wish you could go to this party. I hear you. Tell me more. All the kids are going, and so you talk them off the cliff, basically. You don't shut it down. You don't say, don't you speak to me that way. You say, this sounds really important to you. Tell me in a way I can hear, right? So you're setting limits, but you're staying connected the whole time.
I really like that. One thing that you talked about that is, I'm definitely seeing it among a lot of that age group, 10, 11, 12, is porn.
Yes.
Okay, because a lot of people don't want to talk about it. It's something that, you catch your daughter doing, or you catch your son doing it, and it's like, what's the best way to cope with that? Because initially you may be just angry and upset. And
I would ask, what's that feeling? I would say, so first of all, you walk in, or maybe you find it after the fact. If you walk in and you see it and your kid's on, they quickly turn it off or something, because of course you walk in the room and you say, that looked disturbing. What's going on? Now, if you can't stay calm at that moment, because as you say, you're too upset, you're too angry, you can also say, this is upsetting to see. Let's turn off the computer. We're going to talk about this later. I think I need to calm down. And you turn off the computer and you say, go to your homework or whatever else. And they're not allowed to be near that computer. If they're like, oh, well, my homework's on the computer, you say, then you need to find something else to do for now. I'm going to calm down first and then we'll talk. Yeah. Okay. So what do you do with the talk?
What do you do with the talk?
First of all, this should not be the first talk you've had about pornography. You should be talking to your child about pornography earlier than that, so they know more about it. But let's say it is the first talk. Let's say they've never had a conversation with you. The first thing you do is you calm yourself down, because if you're upset, you're just going to go in and shame them and blame them, and they're not going to be open with you. And so that's the first thing. You calm yourself down. You reassure yourself, it's okay. My child is not damaged for life. I'm not a terrible parent. We can recover from this. It's going to be fine. Thank goodness I found out about this. So thank goodness I found out. So I have a chance to address this. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then you ask yourself what you're afraid of. What are you actually afraid of? No, I'm afraid my child will be porn addicted. I'm afraid my son being exposed to porn, which is so negative toward women and often includes violence toward women and derogatory attitudes toward women. I'm afraid my son will be a horrible sexist person who will take advantage of women. So that could be a fear you might have. Or I'm afraid my daughter, who put her up to this? Someone exploiting her, what does she actually like this stuff? Like, this is terrible, right? I'm afraid I've been a bad parent. I haven't supervised them enough. I've been working so hard lately. There's so many reactions we can have. So I think it's really good to understand your own reactions. You can write them down in a journal. You can call a friend. But one word of warning, if you call a friend, don't call someone who's going to tell you what to do and make you feel like a worse parent than you already feel at this moment. Because you could call someone who goes, oh my goodness, I can't believe you let your son get into that. That's terrible. You haven't even been supervising him. You better get it together, girl. I mean, like, you can imagine, right? There are people like that in the world. That's not who you call, right? That's not who you call. Maybe that's your mother or your sister. That's not who you call. You call someone who's going to listen to you when you say, can I just blow up some steam and just talk for a minute? I want to clarify things for myself. I want to understand what I'm afraid of here. And I want to understand what my options are. Okay. And you blow off steam or you just journal. That helps too. And then once you get some clarity about that, you reassure yourself, like, I'm not a terrible parent. I have a chance to intervene now. My child is not damaged for life. They're going to be okay. My son is not going to be a rapist. My daughter is not going to be a victim. It's going to be, they're going to be fine. Yes, it's possible that someone put them up to this. They're not going to tell me about that unless they trust me. What do I actually want? Now think about the future here. If you fast forward to your daughter or your son is 25 years old or 35 years old, what do you want for them in terms of sex? Let's just say in terms of sex. Well, we all want our children to be responsible in their sexual lives and to have pleasure in their sexual lives. I think just those two things would be amazing, right? Pleasure and responsibility go hand in hand. That's what we want for our children. So coming in right now with our guns blazing about, you're a bad kid, you did this thing wrong, you went and looked at porn, does that bode well for later pleasure? I don't think so. I think they come out shamed and blamed, and that does not bode well for pleasure. They come out with a lot of guilt. They feel like bad people. They feel like sex has this tinge of badness to it.
Yeah.
Does it make them more responsible? I'm not so sure it does. I think responsibility comes from reflecting on our actions, right? From having, sometimes responsibility and good judgment develop from bad actions that we did that we really realized, oh, that didn't work out so well. That's not who I want to be or what I want to do. But we're not willing, most of us, to examine those things unless we have someone to help us reflect on them in a non-judgmental way. So if we're going to play that role with our kids, again, you can't come in with your guns blazing. You come in listening, understanding, offering understanding for why they might have done it, so that they're willing to consider and reflect and share with you. And here's another thing. When kids are exposed, especially, 10 and 11-year-olds, and that is the average age of first exposure in the United States, at least, which is a terrible thing that we would expose 10 and 11-year-olds with no prep to porn, right? Nobody wants to believe it could happen, and therefore we don't warn them, right? So when kids are exposed to pornography at that age, it's a brutalizing thing. What does that do to their sense of, when I say pleasure, what would get in the way of pleasure when they're 25 or 35? Feeling shame. Well, pornography feels shameful. It feels dirty. Not all of it, but often pornography that our kids would be exposed to, it feels like there's something dirty and secretive about what they're doing and shameful. And they feel ashamed of these feelings they're starting to have in their body as they watch this thing. Maybe they've done it more than once and they're called back to it because, they're starting to really, their sexuality is really awakening in a different way. And they're drawn to what they see because it's the first, they don't really want to see these pictures of people doing whatever they're doing that seems so sort of raw and not loving at all. And maybe even aggressive or violent, right? Or exploitive. But if it's the only sexual pictures or anything they've seen, they might well be drawn to it. They don't know what to do with that. In an earlier generation, a kid might find their dad's Playboy and, see that centerfold and be like, oh my goodness, and be drawn back over and over again and feel all kinds of feelings. But at least, and that was exploitive of that woman, but at least it's a much more tame thing than being drawn to these things on the internet that are increasingly raw, what the children are what anyone is being shown as you continue to go back. They show you more and more raw stuff. So, just to see what rabbit hole would you go down and, so kids are, I would use the word brutalized by this. Their innocence is brutalized. So I think we feel angry at that moment, but the truth is it's because our own fear, right? Our grief that our child was exposed to this and that somehow they have gone against everything we've taught them. We think, but how are they actually, isn't it our fault? But we're also upset because we messed up and let them do it. But again, we weren't supported to know how, right? Most parents are not supported to porn proof their child. And the truth is you probably can't. You cannot keep your child from at some point seeing porn on the internet. There are a lot of things you can do to try to prevent it and stall it, but eventually your child will see porn on the internet. So how can you porn proof them? Well, that again is those discussions you have in advance, hopefully. But at this moment, we're going to calm ourselves down and go back and have the discussion after the fact, right? We walk into the room where our kid is, let's say they're 12 years old. We walk in and we say, that was embarrassing, huh? And your kid's like, Yeah, yeah. And they're looking down and you say, I know you didn't want me to walk in when you were looking at that. Tell me about it. And she goes, they either say nothing or they
Mm.
say, I didn't mean anything by it, or it only happened once. So they're trying to excuse themselves, you know. It wasn't what you thought, you know, whatever. They're going to try to make an excuse. They might even lie because, you know, they're so embarrassed. And you say, you know, sweetheart, the internet is full of wonderful things, you know, puzzles and math lessons and tours of museums and animals in the wild living their amazing lives and people making incredible music. There's so many wonderful things on the internet, but the internet also has, you know, it's like a city. It has all the wonderful museums and concerts, but it also has a seamy side.
Mm.
And sex is not seamy. Sex is something that adults can choose to do that should be pleasurable and wonderful and in a context of caring about the other person. And as you know, I've told you that that's something that happens after you're married. Some people feel they have a loving relationship before they're married and they can do it before they're married. That's all fine. That's an individual choice when you're an adult. You're not ready for those choices yet. And you're not ready for those pictures yet. But I want to add that that wasn't an accurate depiction of sex. That's something that they're trying to sell people because they make money off it. The reason those pictures, those films are up there on the internet is they make money off it. They're trying to make money off it. So they show people things that are shocking. So people will come back to them. So they'll get addicted to them so that when they come back, they will make money. That's how the advertising works. They're advertising to people and they make money based on how many people will come back. So they make it very shocking. It's not what sex is like. I want to make sure you understand that.
Mm. Thank you. Wow. Wow. That is food for thought right there.
And you can ask them questions. You can ask, so how did it feel when you saw that? And your kid will be like, nothing. You know, they're not going to know what to say, but you want to make them as comfortable as possible to share anything. Sometimes kids will say things like, he hit her. He hit her. And, you know, or she looked like she liked it when he hit her. Do girls like that? You know, sometimes things like that happen. He was rough with her and it looked like she liked it. Do girls like that, mommy? You know, sometimes they're like, wow, they're just blown away by what they've observed. And you have to set them straight and say, no, actually, would you like to be hit? No, I wouldn't like to be hit either. Nobody likes to be hit, right? But remember, they're selling this to people. They're trying to be shocking. And there are some guys who like to feel powerful when they have sex. So they like to be in control and they demonstrate their control in these movies by hitting someone to show how much control they have. But we don't have to control someone to have a good time with them. In fact, when you control someone, do you have a good time with them? No. It's like if you were playing with a friend and you got to be in charge all the time. Would that be fun initially? Maybe, but would it end up being fun? Would you have a good relationship? No. And if you have a partner, you can say, do you think your dad and I or your mom and I, you know, control each other in any way? No, we try not to. Sometimes we might want to. I wish that your dad would do the dishes more, but you know, we're respectful of each other because that's the only way to have a good relationship. And that's why I'm saying that's not what sex is actually about, because sex in the context of love looks really different than what you saw, but they're doing something they can sell. But anyway, you're back to the child was traumatized by seeing it. You can say, you know, your beautiful heart that didn't know saw something really shocking. And you can liken it to something else because this isn't really about sex. It's about money and power. The people putting porn online use the sexual drive that is innate to all human beings to make money. That's what they're doing. So it's about money and it's about power, because we know rape, for instance, is not about sex, it's about power, right? And a lot of the porn is about power. And I think it's important for kids to realize that it was traumatic to them to see that abuse of power, because that's an encounter with evil. When people abuse their power to rape, to enslave, to torture, you know, these are things that are abuses that humans are capable of, but not when they are at their best, not when their hearts are open, not when they're where we are raising our children to be. And when children are exposed, imagine your child saw, forget porn for a minute, that pushes our buttons because we have so much shame about sex. But imagine your child, your 12-year-old was exposed to a torture scene. Can you imagine anything worse? I can't. Like, it would be a violation of their soul, right? And so I think it's important to remember that that's sort of what they might have felt like when they they didn't just like see something titillating. They might have seen something that was a violation of their heart and soul.
Yeah.
So being mad at them isn't going to help a thing. Being nurturing to them and helping them talk about what they saw and how it felt and how it scared them, and acknowledging, yeah, and I felt a little sort of sexy inside. Was that bad of me to feel that, right? No, feeling sexy inside is a good thing. That's something that, we know what's healthy. Is it for children to notice, yeah, I'm starting to feel sexy inside now that I'm 12, I'm starting to notice it more. That's something you can do in your own bedroom. Your body is just for you. It's your private temple. You can touch your body any way you want. And when you're older, maybe when you're married, whatever words you want to use with your child, you will make a decision when you love someone, maybe that's something you want to share, but that's not a decision you're ready for yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I think the biggest takeaway I got from this conversation is for parents to think about the outcome of all of the conversations that they have, including like with porn, like what you said, everything that you talked about, we were looking towards how they will be as an adult, or what we want them to be as an adult. So we need to be very mindful as parents of how we deal with these things that come up.
Yes, I think that's a great takeaway. And I want to just say to parents, you don't have to be perfect. No one probably had these discussions with you because we weren't that aware. We weren't that conscious. But think of everything you've done for your child to get them to this point. And I know your teenager drives you crazy sometimes, but what your job isn't quite done. It's a different way you have to do your job. But what an amazing gift you'll be giving your child to support them through the teen years with these kinds of conversations. And you'll be sending them out into the world with so many more inner resources to cope with modern life, because things will come at them that are different than what came at us.
That's what it is. The generational differences, the gaps are huge. Wow. Dr. Laura, you're amazing. I learned something very new today. I didn't even think about that approach with the porn question, honestly. Amazing, really amazing. Okay, so can you believe we're out of time?
It goes so fast. There's so much that's wonderful and exciting to talk about our teenagers, but one step at a time. And I think, we all can keep growing.
Yeah, okay. Listen, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about your free gift for our audience.
Okay, so I have heard from parents that this last year and a half has been the hardest in their parenting life because remote schooling, or even if your kid was in school, all the worry, and it's just, some parents chose to homeschool, but whatever, it's a crash course in big emotions for all of us, in uncertainty and fear and frustration and anger. And anyway, it's been hard. So I created a little meditation. It's only 7 minutes long. It's a little guided meditation. I call it a grounding meditation. And I've heard from parents that it's so helpful to them when they get upset that they can sit down and just turn this meditation on and just for 7 minutes get grounded and sort of offload the stuff they're carrying around that's making them more tense and anxious. And sort of start the day in a better place. Or even if you come home from work, but if you can do it before you're reunited with your child, like they're coming home from school, or, before you even leave your office, if you can, to just put on headphones and sit there for 7 minutes. Anytime you can just take that little moment out of your day helps you get grounded and calmer. So you can start the next part of your day more emotionally generous and connect more with your child. And it's free. You can just go sign up on the AHA Parenting website.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation today. You're amazing.
My pleasure. Enjoy your kids.
That is the best takeaway right there. Because
Yes.
it's fleeting. The moment, I think you mentioned it earlier, the time goes so quickly. And it's like even this stage, this teenage stage, it's gonna pass. It will pass.
Oh, absolutely. Before you know it, you'll be weeping as your child, and you're not showing your child, you don't do it in front of them, but you'll be weeping. I can't believe they're so big.
Yeah.
So just enjoy them now and be as patient as you can.
Listen, I want to thank you once again for being a wonderful guest today and sharing all this wonderful advice with us as parents of teens. Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
All right. All right. I'm gonna